Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, at least in my opinion, I don't think there was a team that improved their roster more than LSU over the last couple of weeks in the transfer portal. And we pretty much broke down every commitment. Now we get the opportunity to kind of take a step back, look at this depth chart as a whole. And I think the question I want to ask is, this LSU team on paper, this roster, is it SEC championship caliber? I think there's a lot of reasons that you could answer yes to that question starting at the quarterback spot. Now, I want to go through it kind of position by position, talk about it. Now, at least in my opinion, the best part about doing this is hearing from the LSU fans in the comment section. Look, I could pull 100 LSU fans that follow this team really closely and say, give me a depth chart. Probably get 100 different depth charts. A lot of different ways this could look. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. A quick shout out to the LSU fans. It's been a really fun last couple of weeks covering this team, breaking down the commitments, and the amount of support the LSU fans have shown the boys has been amazing. So appreciate you guys. Dill, let's start at the quarterback spot. The addition of Michael Van Buren was absolutely money. Like that was a sneaky one that I don't think the national media covered. You talk about quarterback of the future. I think they got one with Mike. Now you look at Garrett Nussmeier. Where does he stack up in terms of SEC quarterbacks? Because this is the reason, if you're going to argue that this LSU roster is SEC championship caliber, you start looking across the SEC and say, all right, Georgia, big time question marks. They just took a visit from a kid from UB. You look at, not a shot at University of Buffalo as a Rochester, New York guy, but that's kind of where they're at with the quarterback spot. You look at Alabama, really big question marks. I mean, Texas has Arch Manning. Where does Garrett Nussmeier stack up to you in terms of SEC quarterbacks?
I think I can definitively say Lagway is probably better. I think you probably make a strong argument that John Mateer is better. Aside from those two, and let me know if I'm missing one.
Yeah, LSU fans might let you hear it.
I don't think you could really say Nico's better than him. So I think aside from those two that I just hit, I don't really see a better quarterback in this conference. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, like you talk about some of the young cats, DJ Lagway, Lenore Sellers at South Carolina. Like
Lenore Sellers belongs there.
The thing with Garrett Nussmeier is I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for the football he played. One, I know LSU loves this kid. I think more importantly, yeah, he came right off the back burner of Jaden Daniels, who put up some insane numbers at LSU. Kind of felt like the national media gave him some unfair heat in terms of players that have played well and players that you trust at the quarterback spot. I put Garrett Nussmeier, right at the top of the list. Now, I think the equally bigger conversation is, look, these pass catchers last year were underwhelming. I think every LSU fan probably agrees with that take. I'll let you have it on my depth chart. I go Nick Anderson, Barry and Brown on the outside, although there's some position flex with Barry and Brown. Aaron Anderson at slot, who I think is a stud and nobody talks about enough. How do you think the pass catchers are playing out for this LSU?
I have a very hard time seeing Chris Hilton Jr. losing that job to Nick Anderson.
Okay.
Chris Hilton Jr. did not play well enough for the bulk of that season. I will say, you go to that Baylor game, if he gives you that level of ball, he might be the number one wide receiver on this team. And I think Barry and Brown's a star. Like, I am a huge fan of him. Aaron Anderson, you said it, like another guy who really had a quietly huge year, I thought, like really dominant, showed an ability to get downfield, obviously showed an ability to work in the slot and get open, just routing guys up.
Well, the yards after the catch, what I love the most about Aaron Anderson.
No, and he was awesome. But, man, Chris Hilton Jr. in that Baylor game looked incredible, the way he was tracking footballs, the way he was getting over the top on guys. Like, that version of him, you have a real unbelievable wide receiver room, I think.
Yeah, and here's what I love about the addition of Nick Anderson is, one, you can figure out a way to get all these cats on the football field, and all of them are going to contribute regardless of who's the quote-unquote starter. I like it more. It's like, hey, we're going to push Chris Hilton Jr. Like, we're bringing in Nick Anderson to almost maximize Chris Hilton Jr. So not only do you bring in Nick Anderson, but you also bring some competition for Chris Hilton Jr. That's kind of the MO with it. Like, can you get the best out of this kid? If you do in 2025, you're right. He might be the wide receiver one on this football team. The other conversation is, what do they do with Trey'Dez Green? Look, I put him at the tight end spot. I think he should split out wide. This kid is just too dynamic out as a pass catcher to line up in line as a tight end blocker. I think that's why they brought in Bauer Sharp. I think that's why they brought in Donovan Green. to allow you to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you use Trey Green. I have him slotted in as a tight end, but I kind of just view him as a big jumbo wide receiver on
Yeah,
the
I don't
outside.
think you're going to get a truly defined position from Trey
Yeah,
Green because I think he's
offensive
going to play
weapon.
pretty much everywhere along the
Yeah,
line. Because frankly, I think he can play inline tight end. Like that is a place where you can use him. I thought again
yeah,
for being a bit of a wiry, leaner tight end, a good willing blocker. Like again, didn't really play a ton, but in that bowl game, I was kind of impressed with what he was doing in terms of his will to get
yeah.
his hands dirty and block guys. So I think he's a guy who certainly can play in line. I think he'll play there at times, but I think you're right. At the end of the day, they made moves to bring in some tight ends because they don't want to have Trey Green playing down and
Yeah.
down out of in line.
Yeah, you're right about that. Like at the end of the day, he didn't look like a true freshman, but he was a true freshman at tight end. And oftentimes with true freshman tight ends, that line of scrimmage physicality is probably the missing piece. He plays, I believe he's playing hoops. I believe he's just joined the LSU basketball team, which is going to be exciting for me to watch. I'm not a big college hoops guy. Wonder what the body looks like. I guess what I'm saying going into 2025. He's going to be a stud. I think this kid's a star in the making. Big question mark here, right? Offensive line. That is to me, if LSU is going to win an SEC championship, the offensive line's got to come together. I look at the inside. I ain't got no problems with it, right? DJ Chester moving out to guard, Braylon Moore and Josh Thompson coming in. That's as good as it gets in terms of an
I
interior
mean, you're
offensive line.
really deep. You're really competitive. Like you probably should have had Paul Mabanga in there. Obviously, a guy who
Yeah.
played a ton and played good football for them.
Yep.
Colin Eccles is kind of the guy I'm looking for and seeing if
I
he
love
can
him.
earn a spot because I was
I don't
very
know.
impressed with him in the bowl
I
game.
don't know where he goes here, but like, yeah, he's a stud
Look,
too.
I mean,
The,
Cohen Eccles, and it's not like a disrespect to Josh Thompson. Like I think
well,
that's be that. I
here's
think
the
Cohen Eccles looks
yes,
like
and
that's
here's
going to
the
make it.
question with Josh Thompson is he can give you some tackle versatility. Now, is he a good enough tackle to play in the SEC right now? I would say no, but I'm sure that's going to be a storyline to watch in spring practice because he has played there at times. Tyree Adams, I thought was pretty impressive in that bowl game against Baylor. My question, Solomon Thomas is a guard to me. I don't think he'll play tackle as a freshman, but Solomon Thomas is going to be a stud, and he's probably going to be in the two deep. My question is Carey's current. Like, what do you do with him? Because if he doesn't necessarily have like the prototypical tackle body, 6'4". I don't think his arms are extremely long, although I might be wrong on that. But he's about as athletic of an offensive lineman as you'll see. Does he push for a tackle spot? That's where the question comes in. And
That's the X factor for this offense. Like I look
yeah, I
everywhere
agree.
else, you feel really comfortable. Like we skipped the running back spot, but like Caden Durham
It's on
emerging
me.
as a true RB1, really, really good player. Caleb Jackson, I'm surprised he's sticking around, frankly, because Caden Durham did kind of beat him out, but a really, really good depth piece. And then obviously super talented Harlem Berry. To me, all my eyes are kind of on that
Tackle.
tackle spot because
Yeah.
both of them are kind of in flux. You have some really interesting young players, Tyree Adams, Weston Davis, Ethan Callaway. You have some guys who I think can step in and do it. And I think you have enough talent to have a good room. But at the end of the day, that is the position group that has to come together because you have nothing proven.
That's the position where I look at it and say, all right, let's go through spring practice. Carey's Kern's going to be on campus. Weston Davis, Tyree Adams continue to develop. What do we have with them? Do we need to go get a tackle after spring practice? That would be really the one position I'm looking at saying
And it
that's
doesn't feel like LSU is really making hard pushes at tackles in the winter portal, if I recall.
yeah.
Like it didn't feel like a position that they really wanted to get aggressive with. So they probably have a sense of what they
Yeah,
have.
they kicked the tires on a few, but you are right. Like the positions they wanted to address,
They weren't missing on the guys they
yeah,
wanted.
yeah. I do agree with that. All right. Moving over to the defensive side of the football. Love what they did with the edge room for a couple of different reasons. One, I think he got some real talent at that position. Two, I think he got some really unique, different skill set kind of guys. Jack Pyburn and Jamari Butler, heavy handed, going to be really good in the run game. Then you add Patrick Payton, who's just about as juiced up and long as it gets coming off the edge, kind of that sack master of the group. You have some young cats that I think we're excited about too.
Relaford's
Is a
gonna be a
dog.
guy. I mean,
Yeah.
not like prototype length, if you will, but super explosive. I think plays really physically, and he's kind of a guy I'm frankly looking like. I think he's gonna push Patrick Payton for snaps. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't be
But
surprised
the thing is, like, kind of how we talked about the wide receivers, like quote unquote starter doesn't matter. You
Yeah.
know, like, all right, maybe on a 1st and 10, Jack Piber and Jamari Butler out there. Let's stop the run. Like, you want to get sacks, we got to start creating some 2nd and 3rd and longs. All right, Jamari Butler, Jack Piber, and they're coming in stopping the run. 2nd and 3rd and long, like, we're trotting out a fresh Patrick Payton. We're trotting out a fresh Gabriel Relaford, turning this thing up. It's ideal. The way I look at it, you got 4 of them that you trust a lot going into 2025. The big question here, interior defensive line. I think the biggest name here is Don McKinley. Like, does he emerge as a game wrecker for LSU on the inside? If he does, my questions are mitigated.
I have one huge issue with your defensive tackle
Okay.
list, and that's leaving out Ahmad Bro. Because Ahmad Bro might have probably played better football, frankly, than Don McKinley last
Okay.
year. Ahmad Bro is going to be a true sophomore who I think is a day one starter for this team. I look like Guillory's a solid player for sure. Sean Washington, I think, is a little bit underrated. Like, I don't think he's a good starter in the SEC, but certainly gives you good depth and I'll give you good minutes. I think it's going to be Ahmad Bro being kind of the leader of this room. I
All
think
right,
he's the
huge.
best guy in this
I'll
room.
add him.
I am very interested to see what he can be.
I'll add him. I'm happy I had you on for this because the LSU fans probably be lighting me up.
Oh, if I was an LSU fan,
Yeah,
I'd be
good.
teeing off.
Yeah, good. I deserve it. That's actually funny because I had him and I was like, okay, let's just go with the 2 deep. All right, Ahmad Bro, get him added to the depth chart next time we pull this thing up. Here's the conversation to me. Linebacker, you got Whit Weeks coming back, West Weeks, Harold Perkins. What's the star position going to look like? Dill, and look, I'm just sitting here in my basement, and I know Coach Baker's a heck of a lot smarter than me, but man, Tamarcus Cooley is a bona fide nickel. You got, like, I see a lot of LSU fans saying, all right, he's going to play safety. Harold Perkins is going to play a little star. Like, I want Harold Perkins by the line of scrimmage, by the football, in the tackle box, because that is what he does best as a football player. Very similar to how Penn State used Abdul Carter. Like, get creative with that cat. Tamarcus Cooley, that's the ideal nickel star. And so I say put Tamarcus Cooley there, let Harold Perkins play a little bit more in that tackle box around the line of scrimmage. What are your takes on that? Would I have my depth?
Yeah, I have no interest in seeing Harold Perkins play the star spot or that hybrid nickel
Like,
role, if you
let
will.
him.
That's just not maximizing his skill set.
Yeah, that, and like, look, can he? Yeah, he's a freaky athlete. Yeah, he can. Is that very similar? And I hate to keep going to it, but like Abdul Carter. All right, we had Abdul Carter at off-ball linebacker for the first 2 years. Hey, he's a damn good off-ball linebacker. Probably would have been a first-round pick at off-ball linebacker. But then you look at him and say, hey, is that the biggest impact that he can have in the football game? No, probably not. Let's let him rush off the edge in 2024. Was probably the most impactful defensive player that we saw in all of the country. You got to figure out a way to let Harold Perkins have his biggest impact on the game. And to me, that's in the tackle box a little bit more, coming off the edge, being versatile. And look, Tamarcus, and why I said why I even feel better about it is Tamarcus Cooley's a stud at nickel. Like, he looked great there at NC State.
In honesty, I'm kind of wondering what they do with PJ Woodland a little bit as like they fill the depth out and like
Yeah.
PJ Woodland doesn't have cornerback one kind of attributes
Agreed.
on the boundary, like not super big, not super long, a
Yep.
good mover. I feel like he was starting to play a little bit of nickel. I think you saw a little
Okay.
bit in that Baylor game, him work into that nickel role. If you get him on passing downs in that spot, like again, a guy who I think can be a really good like slot corner, just how quick he is and how good he is as a mover. I don't know that he'll ever be a premier boundary cornerback, but you got to find a role for
Yeah,
PJ.
and that's kind of like the big storyline for LSU going into spring practice is, all right, find positions for these cats and let them stick there. You know, and like that's like the biggest problem I had with Matt House. It just seemed like we're just throwing guys in different positions every single Saturday and hoping it sticks. Let them master the craft. And you're right, PJ Woodland's a guy that you're looking at. Cornerbacks for me, Mansour Delane, a bona fide cornerback one. Ashton Stamps. And then you have Jakeem Jackson, who I think is a very interesting cornerback, super talented. And then DJ Pickett. Look, this kid's going to be on the football field. I just think he's too talented not to be. And then you look at the safety spot's probably my other concern. Do you have difference makers there? We'll see.
Sean Spears is the guy because I don't
Agreed.
J.K. and Toviano at this point. I almost like I don't want to say we've seen enough, but like
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not sure there's enough upside.
But he's another guy that's been bouncing around. So it's like, can we let him find a spot. I agree.
He's
I'm
not
not.
a good enough athlete to play corner. I think that's one thing that feels like
Yes, we
almost
learned that.
very abundantly clear. But
Yeah,
Rashawn Spears, I mean, interesting, tall, long
yeah.
safety, played a little bit early in the season, felt like he kind of got phased out a bit. But he's a guy that you certainly have some interesting traits. I will say I think Jordan Gilbert's a little bit underrated. Like I don't
Oh,
think he's like the greatest safety in the world, but I thought he gave him solid enough minutes or solid enough snaps, if you will.
he's a floor riser. I think in an ideal world, he's probably not starting for LSU because that means the young cats are playing better. But I do agree, he's solid. Dill, my overall take on the secondary is look, I know for a fact,
Blake Baker.
Blake Baker. That'll historically. I'm just gonna call him Coach
You
Baker
got
at
to
this
start
point.
repping
Yeah, I
that.
got to start repping that one out. Coach Baker, I know, is a very good defensive coach. Last year, he just didn't have the weaponry in the back end. We just didn't have the depth. We didn't have the talent. TaMarcus Cooley, Mansour Delane, Jakeem Jackson, DJ Pickett. It's revamped. And now his job is to, all right, now I got the guys. Now I got to put together a good unit. And I'm confident he can. Dill, this LSU team has the star talent, has the quarterback at the top, has difference makers on the outside. If they can iron out a few of the questions we highlighted,
If the two young guys at D tackle play really well and the young guys at offensive tackle play really well, you got a real
yeah,
interesting.
you sign me up. You sign me up. Now, again, Texas is probably my pick early. But, look, I got big questions about Alabama and Georgia right now. And you're looking for, that other team that can emerge in the SEC. I think we might be looking at it. We'll see how it plays out. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. Let it fly in the comment section. I know I left some guys out. Dill made that clear. I deserve to take some heat. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.